Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Are you ready to embark on a journey that transcends time and space? Join me as I sit down with Henry Woodman, a visionary entrepreneur and media pioneer, to explore his latest venture, publishing his father's historical romantic fiction series, The Reincarnation of Marie. With a background in entrepreneurship, media production, and travel, Henry's unique perspective will take us on a thrilling ride from the world of virtual reality to the realm of eternal love. Henry Woodman is a true Renaissance man, with a bachelor's degree from the University of Arizona and an MBA in entrepreneurship from Nova Southeastern University. As a trilingual individual, he has a deep understanding of languages and cultures, which has enabled him to successfully navigate the global market. With a wealth of experience in the travel industry, Henry co-founded World Travelvision, WTV, in 1997, pioneering virtual reality 360-degree panoramic photography for travel. He later sold his company, IcePortal, to Shiji Group in 2019, contributing to their suite of technological solutions for the hotel, retail, food service, and entertainment industries. As a seasoned media professional, Henry has produced and directed travel films and videos for major travel companies, earning an Emmy nomination for his work. With his latest venture, Henry is bringing his father's decades-old tribute story to life, showcasing his enduring passion for storytelling and media production. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics of virtual reality in publishing and the biggest challenges and growth. I will leverage the expertise of my guest and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, Henry Woodman, entrepreneur, angel investor, and executive producer of MarieTheStory.com. And with that, I want to welcome Henry to the program. How you doing today, Henry?
Excellent, Mick. That was an excellent introduction. Thank you, man. I'm feeling like imposter syndrome. Who is that guy? I want to meet him.
Oh, it's you. That's it. We all want to meet you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
You bet. So, you're in a really interesting field, that's storytelling and media production. So I'm really curious, like, what was the pivotal story and how did you get into this field?
Well, it's funny. I kind of got into it by happenstance. When I was 16, I was me and my brother, who was 17, and some of our teenage friends were sent to Honduras looking for a lost city in the jungles. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Who the hell sends a teenager to the jungles
Sure.
anywhere? And so my dad said, "Oh, it's going to be a great adventure. You'll love it." And we, of course, bought into all of this, not realizing the dangers of teenagers running around in the jungle. And anyway, make a long story short, we did survive because here I am. We had an ABC Sportsman film crew film the after effects, if you will, some ruins that we found. We never found this legendary lost city. And while we were filming, I thought to myself, wow, the director, who was 24, I said, "This is great, man. The guy's traveling around. He's not at a 9 to 5 sitting at a desk. This is what I want to do with my life." So, of course, my goal was, go to college. I went to the University of Arizona, as you mentioned, to study radio, television. And eventually, I was going to go off to Los Angeles and seek fame and fortune producing and directing movies.
Right.
Of course, that didn't happen. Life got in the way. And which I can expand on. I'll go on and give you the whole backstory.
Well, I'm curious, and if it's the way you got into it, and this is obviously a field with technology is changing so much, what kind of changes have you seen? And you've been in this game for a long time. So what would you say are some of the changes that you've seen over the years?
Sure. Well, lots of them. Obviously, when I started in the industry back in the early 80s and through the mid 80s to early 90s, we would shoot travel films on film, right? On 16 millimeter celluloid. We would go back to a cutting room with a razor blade and we would literally cut the film and splice it together.
Yes.
Right? That was the
Yep.
world we lived in. And while I'm sitting there with these travel films, one of the films we shot was in Chile in Latin America.
Right.
And late 80s, early 90s, Chile goes from a dictatorship with Pinochet to a
73. Yeah.
democracy.
Hmm.
Yeah. And as a result, they added new television stations and they needed content, right?
Okay.
So I'm thinking, I've been traveling for 10 years. I need to settle down a little bit and sleep in the same bed for more than a couple of days. So let me package a show and pitch it to the Chilean new television network, right?
Okay. Sure.
So I fly down to Chile. I meet with the production company that was giving us support services while we were there.
All
And
right.
we pitched this show called Machos, which was an idea that I ripped off from a US show. And here I come as an American producer, and they loved it, right? So
Cool.
we ended up producing this show, this game show for the younger demographic, because not only was Chile needing content, but there was also a young demographic. So they
Okay.
ate it up,
Right.
right? A dating game show for the youngins.
Sure.
And now, yeah.
So with that, then I was curious how things have kind of like come up to date because there are a lot of changes, but where would you say are like some hot topics? Like what's going on in the media field?
Right. So there I am. I'm in Chile. And somebody comes up with, at the time it was called the Cube, which was a digital nonlinear edit system.
Okay.
And they could literally copy and paste video scenes and move them around like a Word document, cut and
Yeah.
paste. And I'm like,
Sure.
that was the coolest thing ever. I could
Yeah.
not believe it. I mean, I went from film cutting it to video where you would have A/B roll and you'd,
Right.
switch and things like that.
Sure.
And I thought, wow. Then somebody hands me a CD-ROM and said, take a look at this. And I put it in the computer and it shows me a 360-degree tour where I can look up and down and all around. And I
Yeah.
thought,
Right.
oh my God, that is too cool. I don't even have to go to these. Wow. So this is what prompted me to go from the film industry and travel films specifically to go
Sure.
and travel with 5 guys and 17 pieces of luggage to traveling with one camera and shooting 360s of a destination, which
Wow.
is why we set up World Travelvision.
Yep. Sure.
So this is now, the mid 90s, and we're shooting virtual tours for the travel industry, and they would get CD-ROMs and they would take them to trade shows and conferences. And eventually, sort of the late 90s, they would say, how do we put these virtual tours on this new World Wide Web thingy? I'm
Yes.
like, I don't know, right? Send them a CD-ROM. And they said, yeah, but there were no standards. And I said, okay, I don't know anything about technology, right? I'll see what I can do. And so we realized the value was not in the production because any kid and a camera would now be a competitor,
Yeah.
but the value was in the distribution, right?
Sure.
So
Okay.
we would produce virtual tours inexpensively, and we would use that essentially as a springboard to then distribute those virtual tours to some of the travel sites, the Expedias, Orbits, and Travelocities of the world.
Sure.
And now we're distributing virtual tours when we then realize, well, the value is in the need to have, which is photos, not the nice to have, which is virtual tours. Now, back in the day when the systems that would tell you what's the rate and is it available, they never had photos. You'd go to your brick and mortar travel agency and they'd have this cryptic green screen and it would say, yeah, it's available on that date. And, they've got free parking and, some facsimile of what's available.
Yeah.
But there were no pictures, right? So the internet comes along and they need pictures. The problem was those big news sites would have a different repository, a database to store pictures. And then there's the rate and availability that they would marry on the website. Right?
Yeah.
And eventually it became the wild, wild west as more people started building websites and the pictures didn't have standards and people essentially didn't have the IP, the intellectual property rights, and the management companies wanted control over what it looked like. We have standards here, right?
Yeah, sure.
So eventually we morphed from, producing and distributing virtual tours to eventually getting a system to manage and deliver photos. And so, 25 years later, of course, we were an overnight success.
Yeah.
25 years later, if you go on to any travel website on planet Earth, really, and you see photos from, the Wyndhams, the Hyatts, the Hiltons, the Best Westerns of the world,
Yes.
that will come from IcePortal service.
Oh,
So
okay.
we would collect images from all of the major companies and representation companies, and we would size, tag, categorize, and send them everywhere. So that was essentially the software as a service company that was sold to Shiji, and you had mentioned in the opening.
Got it. So, where would you say, and what can you do and advise and recommend people to say, like, where is the state of things now, and what should people be thinking about if they want to present the kinds of things that you've been doing in the past?
Yeah, it's really a lot of, I would never have known there was an opportunity had I not been in the space. But, I'm somewhat of a hedonistic or opportunistic entrepreneur where I'm in a space and I'm like, there's an opportunity there. Instead of
Yeah,
saying somebody should do something about this, I'm like, well, let's see what is being done. And if not, let's do it ourselves, right?
sure. Okay.
So I think that the space itself is still evolving. I mean, listen, there's a lot of um, digital revolutions because some of the things that are old legacy systems come into the internet world, right? And they're
Yeah.
still using some of these old systems, whether it's the travel industry or any other industry. There are opportunities to essentially cut out some of those steps if you know the business, right?
Okay.
I initially had no idea that photos were a problem until I happened to be in the space delivering virtual tours. And I'm realizing, oh, this is a bigger issue and this is what they really need, right?
Yeah.
So I think, early on in any entrepreneur's business, when you think, okay, is there a problem that I'm solving? Is this a problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And early on, you say pretty much yes to everything because you're a cheap whore and you take a nickel for anything.
Yeah.
This is, listen, I need to survive, right?
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
eventually, when you realize, yeah, and I mean, not literally, but eventually, when you realize, this is where I can win, right? This is where I can develop a moat that I can protect. Then you say yes to that and no to everything else because it
Mm,
then becomes a distraction. Because, we start with virtual tours, then we start with producing and then distributing virtual tours, and then we start with uh, distributing virtual tours and then helping with photos, and then eventually we get rid of virtual tours and production altogether, and all we do is
yes.
photos.
Sure. So I think when a person is thinking of presenting and it has all kinds of applications, right? It's travel, it's hotel, it's retail. I mean, it's just about everything. What kinds of things would you suggest that they look for, and what would they be trying to get their message out, or their pictures out, the visual elements out now?
Well, I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to know, what are you going to do for me? Are you saving me money? Are you saving me time? Are you helping my clients? Whatever that is. I mean, at
Right.
the end of the day, if you go in and say, listen, I have this great idea and I'm really interested because it'll make me money. Who the hell cares? I have a great idea and it's going to save you a lot of time and money. And here is how. And, whatever percentage, you spend X amount of time doing this laborious work where my technology or whatever I have will save you, 23% in man hours. And that equates to, X amount in dollars.
Yeah.
And that I think is the story you want to go with is
Sure.
what
Okay.
is it going to do to help you, the client or the prospective client?
Got it. So in terms of what you do, could you just walk us through, like, what is it that you do if you work with somebody, and how do you present their message? Like, what's that process like?
So what I did with IcePortal is what I do now is less. But when I was, trying to get the clients, this was a long gestation period. Big companies like Wyndham, for example, with 9, 10,000 hotels. It's not
Sure.
easy
Yeah.
to change your platform to integrate with some other platform. For two things needed to happen. One, I needed to be hanging around long enough for people to take me seriously and say, okay, he's not going to be out of business next year, right?
Yeah. Right. That's true.
Two, I would go to the conferences and the trade shows, and I would press the flesh. I would plant the seeds. And, I could barely afford the trade shows, but because we were producing virtual tours, we had photographers. So I would trade a booth and, the entrance to a conference or a trade show in exchange for photography, which was great because it cost me far less than it would have cost to do all of that.
Yeah.
And so they give me room in a booth. So then I would meet with the clients and I would tell them, or I would ask them, better said, how are you doing this now? And they would tell me, and they'd say, wow, okay. What's the dream? I mean, how can it be easier? Now, we had one competitor who did a far better job of penetrating early on because they raised millions of dollars in VC money. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So what ended up happening is we needed to convert from that system to our system. And we would constantly keep in touch and say, okay, so when do these contracts expire and what's working and what's not working and what can be improved on? So we would know if we ever get that opportunity, what are we going to do in order to win that business? Mm-hmm. So we would have to survive, if you will, with, producing and distributing virtual tours in order to get the more lucrative ongoing contract of photography. So the answer to the question really is we would plant a lot of seeds. We would meet with people. In some cases, it took years, right? But we would always ask, what are you looking for? What can we do? What can we do better? Where are the pain points that we can solve that are not being solved now? And why?
Yeah. In terms of actionable tips, right? Okay, a lot of people are probably unfamiliar with the field. They would like to know how to get their visuals out and the message out. What kinds of actionable tips could you provide for them to consider?
Well, from a hotel perspective, the visuals it's a very, like I think there's 70 companies on planet Earth, whether it's a management company like Hilton, or it's a representation company that deals with thousands of independent properties like Henry's Hotel or something, right?
Okay, sure.
You essentially go to them and you meet with the distribution people and the people who deal with media. And, there are so many different departments. I used Hilton as an example. So Hilton has I want people to come to my website because then I don't have to pay Expedia. But then there's another department that says, I want people to have the best visuals and the best experience so they book on third-party websites like Expedia, right?
Yes.
So you want to talk to the people that are doing that, one. You also want to make sure that you are constantly, and I don't mean berating them every day, but constantly keeping in touch and being friendly and seeing them at places so they're familiar with what you're doing, right? I would send them Christmas gifts and all kinds of stuff just so that our name was out there all the time.
Right. So the
answer is really I would also say, like, a lot of these companies would be in a specific city, let's say Dallas, for example, and I would call and I would say, listen, I'm going to be in Dallas in a couple of weeks for some meetings, and I'd love to stop by. Which wasn't always true because there were no meetings. I just wanted to schedule a meeting, right? And they'd, yeah, sure, right? And so I'd schedule meetings like that, right?
Okay.
And that would, at least put a face to the name and, somebody's family, take them to lunch. And it becomes they're not buying, what you do as much as who you are and how you can make them look good.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's visual. So you want it to look good, right? I mean, that's primary, right? Make it look as good as possible.
Exactly.
And it's such a groundbreaking field and it's so exciting and, technologically on the cutting edge. I'm curious now if a person has some familiarity with what you do, what would you recommend, how they reach out to you? What kind of contact information could you provide?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, the website that you gave earlier, and we'll give again or put in the show notes, is, mariethestory.com, which is what I'm doing now. And it also has links at the bottom. It has links to my LinkedIn profile. Okay. It has my Facebook and Instagram. So there are all kinds of ways to reach out there and, get that information. And especially if you're in South Florida, come by. We'll grab a lunch or a coffee.
Yeah. See, if you're there or where you're not there, you just say, let's get together, right? That's
Yeah.
how it
And
works.
nowadays it's virtual. Yeah, let's
Yeah, it's
do a Zoom
virtual.
call.
Of course, I'm going to be there. I'm everywhere.
Exactly.
Well, Henry, thank you so much. I mean, this is really interesting. It's really a fascinating field, and you got some great projects going. So I appreciate you taking out some time and chatting today.
Thank you.
You bet. So, with that, I certainly would like you to stay and abreast all the things that I'm doing and all the things that are coming up. So, I want to thank the sponsors of the program, that is, the publishers of both Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter, for their support of the program. And of course, make sure that you're liking, subscribing, positively reviewing, and sharing on social media. If you want to know more about what I do, I'm the idea to author coach. I help business leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs break through their obscurity through written presentations, building credibility and authority. So if you have an idea, let's get it out there. We can find out how you can publish and where you can get your publication out there to the rest of the world. Until next time, this is the Dr. Digital signing off. Thanks for tuning in. Deus Volt.